All right, all right, all right. There we go. We are live. It's official. Hope everybody is doing good today. Trump yesterday, Ukraine is doomed. Trump today, Ukraine will conquer. Scott Trump tomorrow. I have negotiated a deal between Russia. Blah 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 blah. Yeah, no, this is the classic Trump way forward. You just, no matter what happens, you just change your position, and it lines up somewhere in the middle. I think we talked about this with Gaza, with Israel. We talked about it with all of his negotiations with Iran. It's just you can't pin it down. It's crazy chaos, and then his side tends to benefit from it. So yeah, you just got to not pay attention to what he says and just follow policy. This is what I've said for the last couple of months. Just not listening to him makes no sense. And that's the point, is that you're never supposed to know where he's at. And, you know, you just end up seeing what comes out of it. And you usually can predict it based off of a U.S. policy. So, hello, Aka. Alex, good to see you in here, everybody. Good to see you. Hello from Quebec. You guys know I love to see where you guys are from. Ski, or if you're from Denmark, tell your government to stop making up stories about Russian drones. It's crazy. Good evening from Sicily, Italy. Hello, Scott from Toronto, Canada. Hello. Someone slipped Trump a Tylenol before that post. Yeah, no. I don't know about you guys, but I've been slamming Tylenol and sitting by warm showers as directed by my medical professional mother since I was a young child. My mom also crushed Tylenol. So if anybody's got that Tylenol autism, it's this guy right here. Bosnian SoCal. Oh, Bosnian in SoCal. Nice. Welcome. Iberian Peninsula. Pakistan. Facts there lying about the Danish government. Pakistan, good to see you. Resident, changed your name again. Hello. Hello from Guantanamo Cell 6. Soon where I'll be streaming from Norway. I look like I'm streaming from Guantanamo Cell 6. Anybody who follows me on Telegram saw my setup. Yeah, no, it works. It's fine. I just got a lot of strange lamps, putting a whole bunch of light on me. It's awesome. I haven't changed it for a while, Scott. It's been like, oh, has it? I thought it was something else. The profile picture is the same. Never mind. Forget I said anything. Greetings from Alaska. Beautiful. Hawaii. Beautiful. The non-continuous 48. All right, guys. Welcome in. This is episode number 6 of Casual Calibration. I am your host, Scott. We have a few things to talk about. We have potential Russian. I'm sorry. Excuse me. I got mixed up. We have potential U.S. strikes on Venezuela being mulled over currently. We have a Gaza peace plan that Trump wildly announced today with Bibi in attendance at the U.S. At the White House. We also had, let me think, Venezuela, Gaza. Trump has changed his tune on Ukraine, which we talked about. But it has gone a little bit further than that. J.D. Vance has made some statements today. The White House is mulling over the release of Tomahawk missiles to Ukraine for deep strikes into Russia. We also have Ukraine striking Russian energy infrastructure. The Russians are also striking Ukrainian infrastructure. So we have quite a bit to talk about today. Don't forget, guys, if you are new here, to like, comment, and subscribe. That helps me out tremendously. If you are already subscribed, please click that like button. Make sure that bell is on. I know sometimes the bell doesn't work for people. I'm trying to figure that out. And other than that, any more housekeeping news? Oh, if you guys want to support me, I have started a Buy Me a Coffee. That is revenue stream, if you will, from you guys supporting me goes completely back into my setup. I'm going to be looking at getting some new lights, a new background, and potentially a new camera as well. So I appreciate all of you who have already bought me a coffee. And if you would like to buy me a coffee in the future, I truly support your decision as well. All right. Hello, Scott. Put on your prediction when Kupiansk is falling. I will talk about that today. One last housekeeping thing before we get into it, guys. Remember that dog hair. Remember that my Ukraine map update videos are now posted separately on my YouTube page. That video has gone up and is live, I believe. Yes, that video has gone up and is live. So if you want all of the Ukraine map updates, I might show the map. I might talk about specific areas, but I'm not doing a top to bottom map update any longer on my live streams. Those videos can be found separately on my page. Thank you guys for all of the support on my last video. It did better than the previous two, and I really appreciate that. All right, I think we're good. I already saw it. You're the homie, dude. Thank you. Hi from French Guinea, Oklahoma in the house. Good to see you guys in here. All right, let's go ahead and get started. Let's talk about what's going on in Ukraine. All right, well, we'll start there. So, along the entire front line, the Russians are now advancing. I will actually take us over to the map. I know that I said I wasn't going to do that, but I lied. So over to the map, I'm going to just show you a quick overview of what is going on. We have a ton of Russian movement in the direction of Liman. This is pretty standard, actually, for the past 3 weeks of updates. The Russians have just been consistently advancing towards the city of Liman here. There's an active Ukrainian encirclement potentially occurring now in this sector. And this is the sector that the Ukrainians decided to pull back from, right? I'm going to move this up here, actually. This is the sector that the Ukrainians decided to pull back from, specifically the Sobyansky forestry right here, which has now been fully captured by the Russians. The Russians are now in Yampil. They are now encircling Siversk and putting a ton of pressure on Liman itself. As soon as Stavki falls here, Liman is going to be in a seriously bad situation. The reason why this is now occurring is because the 12th Azov Brigade was sent to the Pokrovsk area to stabilize this front after this Russian breakthrough occurred, as well as the 3rd Azov Brigade, which was sent from the Liman area up here to the north, the Borova area, to Kupiansk to help stabilize the situation in the city, which, by the way, if you take a look at the situation in the city, it has become much, much worse for the Ukrainian armed forces. I think that Kupiansk is going to be the first city of all of the cities that are embattled right now to fall to the Russians. And this is just, my map didn't save right. Apologies. This is too much. This is supposed to be back up here, and this is supposed to be back up here. Although this area is in the gray zone, it has not been confirmed. So this is the overall situation in Kupiansk, and it makes holding this bridgehead incredibly difficult now that the Russians have a control over a majority of the city. The Ukrainians are trying to push the Russians back, but it's not yielding results like it should be. Even Deep State and some of the other pro-Ukrainian maps show just a massive gray zone. I'm going to call it a little bit of cope because it definitely looks like cope to me. They have this area out here in gray zone. They're basically copying Deep State, which is hilarious. But yeah, so Kupiansk is in a much, much worse off situation. And I would say that within the next 2 to 4 weeks, so by the end of October, at least the western part of Kupiansk should be captured by the Russians. Remember, there are still some small crossings down here that the Ukrainians can use to supply this area, but it is getting much tighter and much more constricted. So there's movement in the north, again, at Kupiansk, in the middle at Liman. The Russians are, again, advancing out on the northern flank of Pokrovsk, undoing some of the Ukrainian counterattacks in this region. The Russians seem to have stabilized, controlled the area, and are now advancing. And then down here in the Dnipropetrovsk, eastern Zaporozhye region, the Russians are basically at a full-on breakthrough now. They are approaching the Pokrovske-Gholyai-Polye road at an incredibly quick pace. The last advance here was 8 kilometers straight in a straight line. So that is pretty wild for this conflict. I mean, 8 kilometers in any given direction at any given time is notable, to say the least. But with the Russians advancing just through fields now on the backside of this fortification, I think we can now agree that the Russians have broken through the defense lines of the Ukrainian armed forces and are now pushing into the open fields of Ukraine back here. And that is pretty evident by how fast the Russians are advancing towards the Pokrovsky Holyai-Polye highway. All right, guys. All right. That is it for the map today. I know that was shorter. Remember, you guys can go find a full map update. I think it's like 21 minutes. I just posted that right before this live stream started, just recorded it right before this live stream started. So you can go there and find all of that information after this live stream is over. Don't leave right now. Don't leave right now. Just watch this. All right. Remember, if you guys have any questions that you want to ask throughout the thing, you can always throw them up in the chat. I might miss them. I'm sorry. If you want them answered, I always answer super chats. So if you guys want your questions answered live on stream, you can do it that way. Let's go ahead and get into some of the stories here. So we have the Trump administration considering supplying Ukraine with long-range Tomahawk cruise missiles, Vance says. So Zelensky was most recently at Trump's side. He basically apparently convinced Trump that Russia is somehow going to lose the war economically. They're suffering such heavy gas shortages in the country that the war is about to come to an end and the Russian economy is going to collapse. This is quite literally the biggest bunch of bullshit I've ever heard in my entire life. You can talk to people in Russia. There are some areas that are experiencing slight disruptions of gas supply, but there's no complete shortage. There's, people aren't freezing. That's not what's going to happen. We are talking about Russia here. Okay. So refinery strikes, while they might have minor impacts domestically, they're not going to change the tide of the war. That's not going to happen. They are not disrupting Russian exports. The only thing they're disrupting is the domestic refining of gasoline for like vehicles, like cars and stuff like that. So the gas at your gas station, not like the diesel that the Russians use for their military, right? So this is the first thing that you have to look at. The second thing you have to remember is that this is the only thing good going for the Ukrainians right now across the board. Across the board, there is nothing beneficial happening for them anywhere. Right? No, there's not a single place on the front line that is going their direction. There is not a single good piece of news outside of wonder weapons that is going to impact the battlefield in any significant way. They are not going forward with 18 to 25-year-old mobilization. In fact, they have opened the borders and let something like 36,000 people out from that 18 to 22-year-old group, which is unbelievably stupid, in my personal opinion. If you're trying to win a war, if you're going to fight a war to its conclusion, you need the manpower. The Ukrainians are foregoing that manpower at a time where they have massive manpower shortages across the front, right? So there's not really a winning mathematical equation here, besides doing something existential to the Russian economy or to their quality of life domestically. But I want you guys to think about this very calmly. The Russian state right now is fighting the SMO in a way that prevents the Russians from knowing that there is an SMO going on right now, right? The whole idea behind SMO is not that you're fighting the war in a particular way. Yes, there were some rules at the beginning. Those rules have changed. I would say that the Russians would consider this a war, right? It is a direct war, but they are referring to it as an SMO and using this language because you don't want the normal Russian to be constantly thinking that they're at war. Like that's the whole idea. You want normal life to continue while this operation is taking place in the back of your mind, right? It's not at the forefront. So attacking electrical infrastructure, say in Belgorod, in Kursk, in Bryansk regions, right? Attacking oil infrastructure is not hurting the Russian state. Russian GDP for the last couple of years has been going up steadily, right? You're not going to hurt the Russian position. And even if you thought you were maybe going to do some damage to Russia by doing this, you have to remember that Russia is dealing with this in an existential sort of way, right? They are shifting to the Asian region, right? All you are doing is creating a populace that now understands that they are actually at war, and they will implore the government to do more to prevent their quality of life from going down, right? This doesn't mean that they're going to call for an end to the war, because this is an existential war on their border. It's not like Iraq. It's not like Afghanistan. It's not like Vietnam, right? It's not like Afghanistan for the Soviets. That was not an existential threat for the Soviets in the 80s. They went there, they wasted money, they wasted manpower, they wasted time. And at the end of it, they had to pull out because there was nothing beneficial for them there anymore, right? Ukraine is a completely different story. Ukraine is on their border. It is an existential threat. They consider the people of Ukraine to be Russian peoples, right? So you have a completely different mathematical equation when you're talking about it from a Russian perspective. And the idea that you are somehow going to convince the Russian people that they need to go against Putin and turn against the war machine and demand a cessation of hostilities is just a complete fabrication, and it is a completely ridiculous position to take. Did the Iranians demand that the Iranian government surrender to the U.S. after their nuclear program was struck and after the Israelis had been bombing them for 12 days? No. What were they out doing? Supporting the government, trying to get rid of the Israeli assets in the country. They were literally groups of men going around and pulling people out of cars that they suspected of being Mossad or suspected of, firing the ATGMs that killed people at the beginning of the operations and stuff. The rally around the flag aspect is so real and cannot be ignored. And the thing about the Russians right now is they are not rallying around the flag. They are just going about their normal daily lives. If you put the Russians into a position where they are forced to rally around that flag, I don't know, say you cut off all of their electricity or you blow up all of their gas refinement. Who do you think that hurts? It hurts the civilians. And what happens when you hurt the civilians of a country? That country goes so much harder on the country they're at war with. They do not surrender. They do not give up. They do not make peace. It is clear that the Russians have wanted to make peace the whole time, and the West and the Ukrainians don't want that. So now you're going to start impacting civilian life in Russia because you think that's going to benefit you on the battlefield or convince the Russians to stop fighting. If anything, it convinces the Russians that they have to fight harder. So the whole ideology around these infrastructure strikes make no sense. Additionally, you have the Ukrainians now using HIMARS, Neptune missiles, ATACMS potentially if they have them still, for deep strikes on Russian energy infrastructure. These are not military targets. This does not disrupt logistics for the military. All this does is brings the war to the Russians, which is what they've been openly saying. We need to bring the war to the Russians, except that idea has no basis in reality to actually help you win. It's only going to put you in a greater deficit. So before I started talking about the Tomahawks, I just wanted to talk about the uselessness of infrastructure strikes in Russia, because it will not impact them militarily. Russia's way too big for that to occur, right? You might affect the border regions. You might have some power outages in Bryansk or Rostov or some of these other places that are close to the front. But Moscow is not going to be losing power anytime soon, right? That's not the situation. And if Moscow loses power, what do you think happens to power in Kiev? And who do you think benefits more from the other side not having electrical infrastructure? The Russians. The Ukrainian grid is already damaged, right? If the Ukrainian grid goes down, they have no rail transport, they have no means of logistics, and things are going to get so much worse. But the Russians have prevented doing this because of their own limitations, their own rules that they've set on this conflict for how they see the full occupation of Ukraine happening in the future. So before I get into this, I'm just going to read this. Jolani, Trump photos are alternate reality level dystopia. Yeah, no, bro. Watching Al-Qaeda shake hands with the U.S. president in Washington is just insanity to me. That is crazy. All right. Trump considering supplying Ukraine with long-range missiles, Tomahawks, Vance says. The U.S. is considering a request by Ukraine for long-range Tomahawk missiles, U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance has said. However, Vance added President Donald Trump would be making the final determination on the matter. Why is Donald Trump making a determination on what military aid to send to a foreign country? What the fuck does Trump know about that? Huh? Is it just the red line that you're crossing so he has to make the decision? Because he's not a military man at all. He knows nothing about what's going on in Ukraine. That's abundantly clear from his tweets and his flip-flopping. He just doesn't care. I generally don't think he really gives a shit. And so to say that Trump has the final decision on that is obviously just a PR thing, but it's just very goofy to think that he would have the final determination in that. Kiev has long been calling for its Western partners to provide it with weapons that could hit major cities far from the front line, arguing that they would help Ukraine seriously weaken Russia's military industry and bring the war to an end. So, how many Tomahawks are we talking about here? Because we saw how many ATACMS the Ukrainians got. We saw how many Storm Shadows the Ukrainians got. And we saw how that wildly impacted the battlefield, correct? HIMARS, game changer. ATACMS, game changer. Storm Shadow, game changer. Neptune missile, game changer. The most recent one, Flamingo missiles. We saw none of them being used. Maybe 2 have been used in totality, and that's just a Ukrainian claim. I have yet to see a single Flamingo missile being used outside of propaganda testing and stuff like that. So we're talking about another wonder weapon, right? Let's say the U.S. has 500 of these that they can send to Ukraine. That's more than ATACMS. That's more than Storm Shadows. I'm not saying that that's the legitimate number. I'm just throwing out a number, right? To hit targets, you have to saturate said target with the cruise missiles that you're firing at it. Also, these cruise missiles have to cover a lot of territory before they reach the military industrial facilities that Ukraine is trying to target. Like the Shahed factories are in the middle of the country. Like, good luck hitting those. Those missiles have to travel a very long way over a lot of Russian territory to then strike said targets. So, first and foremost, I don't really see the Tomahawks providing a lot to the Ukrainians that's somehow going to affect the battlefield in hitting Russian military industry. And with the way the Ukrainians have been using their munitions, I doubt that those would even be the realistic targets. I think the only targets that Ukraine would go after right now are things that are either easy to turn into PR. So, power going out in Belgorod is a good one, hitting the power plant there, saying that we're bringing the war to the Russians. Or targets that escalate the conflict to a point where Russia has no choice but to do something dramatic, and potentially it changes the calculus on the war itself, right? So you give them 500, it's a good chance that 50% at least are intercepted, right? As you're firing these saturation salvos. So let's just say you have 250 missiles. You have 250 missiles to make a difference in the war. That's not enough missiles. Okay? The Russians fire 250 missiles a month, no problem. Cruise missiles, Iskanders, everything else, KH-90 or 69s, Lemur missiles. The Russians are constantly firing missiles at Ukraine, ballistic missiles, everything. And it doesn't change the situation on the front the way that the imagination makes it out to be, right? And that's on both sides. I've seen thousands and thousands of Iskanders fired, and it has had, it has impacted the battlefield, but it has not won them the war. So to think that 250 missiles from the U.S. is going to change the war and flip everything around, it's a fairy tale, and it's what you tell yourself when you're losing and you have nothing else going for you, right? If the cost of continuing the war for Moscow is too high, it will be forced to start peace talks, Deputy Defense Minister Ivan Hryuluk told the BBC. This is a fallacy. That is a pure fallacy. If the threat of an existential issue becomes so great on the Russian Federation, you think they're going to give up? Do you think they're going to come to the table once you start escalating and putting pressure on Moscow? It's like these people have never dealt with the Kremlin before. When has the Kremlin ever rolled over to threats? Ever. They never have. Like from another nation state directly at them. I've never one time seen them not do the Russian cold, stone cold response sort of deal. I've never seen it, and I definitely haven't seen it in the last 4 years of this war. Kremlin spokesperson Dmitry Peskov played down Vance's suggestion, saying there was no panacea, that can change the situation at the front for the Kiev regime. So exactly what I just said. There is no missiles. There's no, there's nothing that the U.S. can give Ukraine that is going to facilitate massive changes on the front besides direct intervention with their own military. And that's not going to happen because that's a nuclear war. And the U.S. cannot physically invest that much in Ukraine like Russia can, right? It's almost like a perfect form of projection here when you say, if the cost of continuing the war for Moscow is too high, it will be forced to start the peace talks. That is literally the situation NATO and the United States are in when it comes to Ukraine. The cost is way too high. The cost on Europe, the European economies, the hits that they're taking from this, it's brutal. The cost is way too high. So this is, again, just projection towards the Russians. When the Russians have been at the peace table the entire time, they've just given you their peace deal, and you don't like it. Kremlin, whether it's Tomahawks or other missiles, they won't be able to change the dynamic, he added. And I have to agree, because we've seen other missiles being sent, and they didn't change the dynamic. Tomahawk missiles have a range of 2,500 kilometers, which would put Moscow within reach of Ukraine, which is the whole point. And this is what I said. Don't expect these targets to be actual military targets. Expect them to be just fired at Moscow. That's what I would do if I was the Ukrainians. If I was at the Ukrainian regime right now and I had my back up against the wall and I had nothing good going for me, I would just strike Moscow, which is extremely risky, right? But you're about to lose a war, so you have no other options. While Vance remained ambivalent about Ukraine's request for Tomahawks, maybe we will, maybe we won't. In his remarks on Sunday, the U.S. Special Envoy to Ukraine, Keith Kellogg, Warhawk, seemed to suggest that Trump had already authorized strikes deep into Russian territory, which he has. We've seen ATACMS, we've seen Storm Shadows, we've seen everything being used on Russian territory, HIMARS, deep drone strikes. All of that is conducted by U.S. intelligence, right? You don't think the Ukrainians are using their satellites to find these targets, do you? No, it's all U.S. data. So, yes, Trump did authorize strikes deep into Russia long ago. So did Biden. This is not even a real statement. He's not saying that he's approved Tomahawks. He's just saying that he's approved deep strikes. Asked on Fox News whether Washington had allowed Kiev to carry out long-range strikes with Russia in specific instances, Kellogg said the answer is yes. Use the ability to hit deep. There are no such things as sanctuaries, which is, again, fine, but we've already been seeing that for months and months and months, right? So years even at this point. So it's not going to, tip the scale in any significant way. The only thing it's going to do is escalate the conflict. Vance and Kellogg's comments match the U.S. administration's recent change of tone in regard to the war. They have not changed their tone in regard to the war at all. The only thing that changed was Trump's tweet saying that they could win, which was just a lie because he had just said a couple months ago that they had no chance of winning and that they needed to relinquish territory and come to the table. So it's a lie. It's a bold-faced lie. That's the only thing that's changed. In February, I was talking about what the U.S. was going to do. What did I say the U.S. was going to do, guys? I'll wait for it to catch up. Can somebody tell me in February what I said the U.S. was going to do? We can go back and look at my live stream. I could literally pull it up right now. Does anybody know? I'll wait for the class to answer. I'm just curious if anybody knows. Pull it up, boy. Let's see if I can find it. But I will talk while I'm trying to find it. I specifically talked about how the U.S. was going to go through the division of labor. This was their policy that Vance announced in February. The U.S. was going to be pulling back from its liability and commitment to Ukraine publicly. while pivoting to the Asian Pacific region. And what ended up happening? And what did I say was going to happen? That the US was going to sell weapons through Europe, and Europe was going to take over the mantle of the war party that is pushing for Ukraine to reseize its territory, so on and so forth. This is literally exactly what I said. And for some reason, people cannot cope and get their brains around this fact. The US policy is an openly stated fact, right? You can't say one thing and then do another thing and expect everybody to believe that what you said is what really happened, right? So they already told us what they were going to do. People just chose not to listen again because they don't, for some reason, people just don't like reading policy papers or listening to people talk about policy. They like the dramatic, theatrical aspects of what Trump does and all that shit. So the US is providing weapons to Ukraine through Europe. I said it 8 months ago. I told you that's exactly what was going to happen. And now it's happening. I'm sorry. I'm not looking for it right now, by the way. I'm just talking. And it's frustrating. It makes me upset because it's so painfully clear and obvious. And nobody wants to accept that reality because the day-to-day is far more entertaining and far more fluctuating. People like the emotional highs and lows of it all, when really you can step back and say, I know this is what's going to happen. I know that the US is going to strike Venezuela because they've been trying to force regime change in Venezuela for over a decade. Why do you move ships in and start striking narco boats for no reason? Why aren't you striking narco in northern Mexico that's actually coming across the fucking border? Oh, because it has nothing to do with drugs or narco. You don't give a shit about that. You want regime change in an oil-rich country on your hemisphere, right? Why do you think 4 out of the 8 new Nepalese, I don't know if it's Nepalese, Napoleon, Nepal just had a violent coup of their country. They pulled the leadership out in the street. It was terrible, right? 4 of the 8 new members of that government are funded by the National Endowment for Democracy. US NGOs are overthrowing regimes on China's border and on India's border to cause problems in both of those nations. I told you this was going to happen. Thailand, Cambodia, the Philippines. Don't even worry about Taiwan. Taiwan is just like Crimea. That's what Taiwan is. Once the Chinese go for Taiwan, once the US forces them to go for Taiwan, they will surround the island, economically blockade it, not let anything in. The island is already like 52% pro-Chinese, pro-reunification. So it's not really going to play out like people think it's going, like there's going to be some huge invasion of Taiwan. No, that's not where the war is going to come from. The war is going to come from the Philippines. It's going to come from Thailand and Cambodia. I promise you, this is what is going to happen. Okay? So just remember what I'm saying right now, because in 6 months, in a year, when I'm sitting here telling you, guys, remember back in September, remember back at the very beginning of October when I told you exactly what the fuck was going to happen? Just pay attention. Just pay attention, because exactly what I said was going to happen with Ukraine in regards to Ukraine happened. And I'm not a genius. I'm just telling you what the fuck they said out loud publicly about what they were going to do. Not what they tweeted, not what they made up in the heat of the moment. No, they're written policy papers for the future of America. Okay? So don't be surprised that this is happening. It's very obvious that it was going to happen. After repeatedly expressing criticism that Ukraine could continue to hold its own against Russia last week, after repeatedly expressing skepticism that Ukraine could continue to hold its own against Russia, last week Trump said Kiev could win all of Ukraine back in its original form, a shift that had reportedly even surprised Vladimir Zelensky. Yeah, because little Vladimir, he knows what is up. He knows that he has confirmed lost 160,000 troops dead, right? That's only the confirmed. He knows that. He knows he's losing Pokrovsk. He knows he's losing Kupiansk. He knows he's losing his defensive lines. He knows the Russians are through the Dnipropetrovsk region. He heard Trump say that, and he said, what the did he just say? Did I say that or did he say that? That's my line. Wasn't he just telling me in the White House that I had to give up territory and we made a whole big theatrical show of it? Didn't he just invite Putin to Alaska where they had a great talk and he said that a bunch of progress was made and they're working for it? And then Zelensky came out and said, no, we're not doing that. And Europe came out and said they're not doing that. And now Ukraine can win. I mean, it's bizarre to me how stupid they think you are. Are you going to be that stupid? Are you going to let them treat you like that and just completely pretend and gaslight you like they didn't say these other things before? What changed? The situation on the battlefield has got worse for Ukraine. What changed? More drones, more Russian Garand 2 and Garand 3 drones are coming into the country than ever before. What changed? Nothing changed. This was always the plan. Ukraine needs to burn. Russia needs to hurt as much as it possibly can in Ukraine. The regime change failed in Russia. That's over. That pipe dream is gone. The Russo-Chinese relationship is like this now. You're never breaking it apart and you're never forcing Putin out as long as Xi is in. It's not happening. So what has changed? I'll ask again. Nothing. Policy hasn't changed. The situation on the ground hasn't changed. The only thing that changed was the words in a tweet. So just be very careful, guys. Yeah, I'm kind of retarded right now. All right. Now we're going to move over to Venezuela and talk about what is going on with the Venezuelan situation. So this is from NBC News. Let me make this bigger. The U.S. is preparing options for military strikes on drug targets inside Venezuela. Okay, first off, why do we have any right to strike anybody in Venezuela ever? They're not a threat to the United States. This goes against international law. This is a crime. This is a war crime, right? So just before we even get started, there is no justification for the strikes that have already occurred in international waters. There's no, and there will be no legitimate excuse for the reason why we're striking narco targets inside of Venezuela. We just want regime change. There are narco targets in Colombia right next door, right? Isn't Colombia like known for its cartels? But we don't bother with them because they're friendly to the United States. What about Brazil? I'm pretty sure there's a load of cartels down there. What about all the sex and human trafficking and drug trafficking that comes across the U.S.-Mexico border? Why don't we go over and overthrow the Mexican regime and secure our border all the way down to Mexico? Why is it Venezuela? Why has it been Venezuela for a decade and a half? Since Juan fucking Guaido. The U.S. military officials are drawing up options to target drug traffickers inside Venezuela, and strikes within that country's border could potentially begin in a matter of weeks, 4 sources told NBC News. We need their oil to prop up Europe right now. That's why we're doing this. We want a friendly regime in Venezuela that lets us do whatever we want. It's not very easy to be an anti-U.S. regime on the Western Hemisphere. It hasn't worked out very well in the past, and it's probably not going to work out very great for Murdo. Those sources are 2 U.S. officials familiar with the planning and 2 other sources familiar with the discussion. They spoke on the condition of anonymity because they were not authorized to discuss the plans publicly. Okay. Always anonymous. Striking inside Venezuela would be another escalation in the Trump administration's military campaign against the alleged drug targets and its stance towards the Venezuelan government. You can just get rid of the alleged drug targets because, again, they're not important. Strike those targets in Mexico as they're coming across the border. Strike those boats in U.S. territorial waters as they come to land. That would make sense. That's defending yourself from a narco problem. Overthrowing regime and putting in another regime is just going to destabilize the region and probably increase the drug problem coming into the United States. In recent weeks, the U.S. military struck at least 3 boats from Venezuela, allegedly carrying narco traffickers and drugs that could threaten Americans. President Donald Trump said on Truth Social, the administration has not yet provided evidence that drugs were on all of those boats, but an official in the Democratic Republic, alongside one of the U.S. embassy there, alongside one from the U.S. embassy there, did say at a press conference Sunday that drugs were found in the water after one of the strikes. Trust me, bro, there were drugs in the water after the boat was burnt up and destroyed. And only one of the boats had confirmed narco on it. So the other 2, who cares? Who cares? Even if they are trafficking drugs, you do not have the right to kill them. I want to make this very clear because I see a lot of people going, "Oh, you're defending drug traffickers." No, fuck those people. They're scum. I hate a lot of criminals just in general, especially petty criminals, because I think it's like just the lowest tier of human life is like stealing, littering. Also, that's just been burned in my head since I was like a 2-year-old. Littering is like a capital crime in my brain. I don't know what it is. If I throw trash on the ground, I need to immediately pick it up or I feel like I'm going to catch on fire. So these are not proportional sentences to the crimes that are being committed first and foremost, right? You do not get to sentence somebody to death in the United States for smuggling drugs, right? 20 years in prison is usually what they get, depending on how much drugs they have. It's not a capital punishment. So why do we get to extrajudiciously kill foreign citizens in international waters without evidence of a crime being committed even? Why? Oh, because we're the empire. That's why. Because nobody tells us no. Nobody's going to say that we're breaking international law. And if they do, we just ignore them. We're actively perpetuating a genocide in Gaza right now. And you think we're going to give a shit about a couple of narco boats? Come on, dude. This is just how the empire dies. This is how hegemony dies right here. I want you guys to pay attention because every step we are making is another step into the grave. It's just mistake after mistake after mistake. And we're trying to hold on, but we only know how to hold on with violence. We don't know how to hold on in any other way. Strikes inside Venezuela could happen in the next several weeks, but the president has not approved anything yet. The 4 people said, 2 of them and an additional official familiar with the discussion said that the United States' recent military escalation is in part a result of Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro not doing enough in the administration's view to stop the flow of illegal drugs out of his country. So it is Maduro's fault, first and foremost. It's Maduro's fault that he can't properly run a country that has been under an intense sanctions regime by the United States until the war in Ukraine started and they had to drop those sanctions because they needed cheap oil, right? So you've sanctioned a country into an oblivion, and now you're mad at them for not cracking down on their internal domestic issues because of your foreign policy. Neat. Well, as long as you can create the problems and then use those created problems to create more problems for yourself, that's fucking fantastic, right? It's criminal activity to the highest degree, and I am not going to sit by while the U.S. does this. I'm going to be very vocal about it, and if we actually get into a conflict with Venezuela, I'm going to go hard, guys. I'm going to get incredibly popular with how critical I am of the U.S. administration and their policies. All right. That's the Venezuela stuff. It's a mess. It's a hot mess, guys. Let's go and look at the Trump proposal for peace in Gaza. So there's a couple of interesting things to go to talk about here. but we'll just read a little bit of this. Trump releases a 20-point plan to end Israel's war on Gaza. Benjamin Netanyahu visited the White House today where this plan was unveiled. The White House has released a 20-point plan to end Israel's war in Gaza as U.S. President Donald Trump and Israel Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu meet in the Oval Office. Netanyahu apologized to Qatar for the killings of its citizens in an attack on the capital Doha earlier this month, the White House has confirmed. Yes, so to get any sort of peace deal going, the Israeli Benjamin Netanyahu specifically had to call and apologize to the Qatari government. This was a request of Qatar. They demanded an apology from Benjamin Netanyahu for the strikes. He did so. The call lasted like 4 minutes or something. Why is that what you need from Israel? Why do you need an apology? The lying, genocidal, murdering who just struck your country lying and doing so during negotiations said, we're sorry. We're so super sorry. We're sorry. And you're supposed to and you just forgive them? They killed your citizens. And the best part about this entire thing, about this entire event, is that the far right, Benjamin Netanyahu's deepest supporters, are livid that he apologized to Qatar. They are so mad, which is just the funniest thing, that it's obviously a lie. He's not sorry. He would do it again tomorrow if he had the opportunity. He's just saying it to get something going to further his own political position. So it's hilarious to listen to the far right in Israel come out and get mad at Benjamin freaking Netanyahu for saying, I'm sorry. It's just wild. Hypothetically, if Ukraine got long-range missiles, what's the top target, like Iskander plans? They would try to hit the factories, I would assume, and probably high-level Russian military facilities, so like command buildings and stuff like that. Anything for propaganda, basically. Let me get back to this. Sorry. So what is Trump's 20-point plan for Gaza? As we've been reporting, the White House has released Trump's much anticipated plan to end the war in Gaza, which contains 20 points rather than 21 as previously anticipated. Here are the main takeaways. Gaza will be governed by a temporary technocratic government, and Israel will not annex the Strip. So that's not really a good... that just means that Hamas loses. So you're trying to make a deal with Hamas, but in this situation, Hamas just loses, and Israel won't annex the Gaza Strip. Like that's like the concession. No one will be forced to leave Gaza. The Strip will be rebuilt. So Israel avoids the genocide accusations that they're actively that they're actively committing. Right? There is clearly a genocide going on, but if no one leaves and you rebuild it, that fades into history. If the plan is accepted by both sides, the war will immediately end with all captives alive and dead returned within 72 hours. Israel will release 250 life sentence prisoners and 1,700 Palestinians from Gaza who were illegally detained, by the way, after October 7th. So people that they just kidnapped, they're going to release. That's nothing. That's literally nothing. During this time, all military operations will be suspended in preparation for a complete staged withdrawal of Israeli troops. Hamas members who commit to peace will receive amnesty, while others will be provided safe passage to receiving countries. So Hamas has to leave, or they can not be Hamas anymore. Those are your two options. Regional and international forces will provide security to train Palestinian police. Aid will flow into Gaza at agreed levels. The U.S. will facilitate dialogue between Palestinians and Israeli for coexistence. This seems like a really good plan for Israel. This does not seem like a very good plan for the Palestinians. What it sounds like is the Palestinians will be getting the same deal they had before. They will not be getting their statehood. They will not be getting any sort of rights. They won't be getting rights under Israel. They won't be getting rights under a Palestinian state. It just sort of seems like all of Gaza was destroyed. 100,000 people are dead, and the Israelis get to just get off scot-free. Hamas has not accepted this deal. Neither have the Israelis yet. I imagine the Israelis will take this deal because this deal looks very close to the Israeli deal that they had. But this is just, I just don't think this is going to work. Again, it's just another plan created up to look good. It sounds really good. But if you actually understand what's going on in the region, you understand that Hamas was that temporary government that was set up by Israel in 2006. Hamas was funded by Israel all the way up until October 7th. They kept Hamas in power to, quote, control the height of the flame. Hamas was theirs. You think all of the hate is going to go away? You think people are going to forget all of the children you killed, all of the women you killed? You think those people, those Palestinians, are just going to peacefully coexist with you Israelis now? It's fucking delusional. And it's exactly why they're putting it forward like this. This is I take it or don't take it. I don't care. The Palestinian issue is not my major issue. I don't like genocides. I don't like killing innocent civilians and stuff. So I'm more pro-Palestinian. I'm not pro-Hamas or pro-Israel or anything like that. So accept the deal. If the fighting ends, that's good because the kids stop dying. But what a joke, man. What a joke. Cosmic joke. If there was a God, he would smite Benjamin Netanyahu down harder than any other human being that has ever existed. And yet he walks around free as day. So, all right. All right. That's all I have to say about Israel and Gaza right now. That's the news coming out of there. Apparently there was a large security incident in Gaza today where like 20 IDF soldiers got seriously injured or killed. So, Israel's not having a fun time in their Gaza operation as is. I'm not surprised they're looking for a way out because annexing that whole region is going to be a bloodbath for them. It's going to be rough. God doesn't interfere with free will. Good men have to stop. God is all knowing, all powerful. He can do whatever he wants. He created the free will. And you can't prove God wrong by doing something with your free will that he doesn't know about or hasn't already planned. So no, we're not scapegoating God's omnipotent power. If he's all powerful and all knowing, he can directly interfere with whatever he wants, whenever he wants. Sorry, logic doesn't care. All right. All right, guys, let's see. I think I have one more thing to talk about. It's just about the Danish drones. Zelensky says Ukraine can help Europe counter Russian drone incursions, which is funny because I have yet to see a single piece of evidence that Russia is incursioning into Danish territory, into NATO territory. We had the Estonians complaining that the Russians were flying over their water, which is hilarious. You know, the Russian MiG, according to their own report, barely entered their airspace, which is 12 nautical miles from the shore, which I don't know if you know the Baltic Sea, though, it's like 30 miles across. So it's not very wide in and of itself. The Russians never entered or never crossed over into Estonian territory, just barely into the Estonian air control space. So, haven't seen any proof of any drones. Haven't seen any proof of any actual incursions. This all just seems to be manufactured consent for continued anti-Russian policy. Zelensky says Ukraine can help Europe counter Russian drone incursions. Ukraine's president has offered to help Poland and other European countries in countering the recent wave of Russian drone incursions and suggested some of the uncrewed aircraft may have been launched from the Baltic Sea. Yeah, because they're trying to crack down on Russia's shadow fleet, and it's all about control, and it's all about, ooh, spooky Russians are coming to get us. And yet we still have seen no actual evidence of Russian drones. The Russian drones that we even saw in Poland were all decoys, which is very suspicious that they're not warheads. They're not flying towards targets in Ukraine. They're only pestering Poland, and they just flew in and landed in Poland for no reason. Hasn't happened the entire war. But now the Russians, as soon as the Europeans and Americans change their position, now the Russians are getting aggressive. Now Putin is being the most based motherfucker I've ever seen in my entire life and is doing all of the things that he was supposed to be doing this entire time, right? Right? That's what we're looking at. Putin finally took the gloves off. Really? Come on. If you don't think this is manufactured consent, you're gullible. Vladimir Zelensky, speaking to a security forum in Warsaw, said his country was offering, quote, to Poland and all of our partners to build a jointly, truly reliable shield against Russian aerial threats, drawing on Ukraine's experience. He said his country's military can counter all types of Russian drones and missiles. He argued that if Russia loses the ability to strike in the skies, it will be unable to continue the war. He's talking about his own country, which is hilarious. But he's referring to helping Europe defend against drones that aren't even there and incursions that aren't even happening. This is manufactured consent. This is a fake article written about fake events trying to push a narrative. And you guys have to recognize this shit. If there were drones over Russia or over Denmark, number one, you would think they would shoot them down. Why aren't you shooting them down? Number two, you'd think you'd have a picture of them, right? You don't have helicopters tracking these drones. You don't have planes tracking these drones. What? You don't have ground visual of these drones ever? Like, you should have an IR video of these drones flying over Denmark airspace or flying over the ocean close to Denmark, right? Because we have those videos from Ukraine all the time. But when it comes to the drones that enter into NATO's airspace, nobody can take a picture and nobody has any evidence of it happening, even though it happened for 3 days straight. That's crazy. Why would Russia do this right now? Why would Russia try to manufacture consent against themselves? It makes no sense. The only sense I can make of it is that Russia has decided in their Russo-Chinese relationship that keeping the U.S. attention in Europe is the best thing to help win the overall war, right? Not the U.S.-Russia war, but the East-West war that's currently playing out. That's the only thing I can think of. And if you're doing it like that, they're doing it in such a sneaky and non-provocative way that nobody can even capture evidence of it. Those sneaky Russians are up to no good. All right. They have videos of them floating around at airports in Denmark and Norway. No, those aren't drones. I mean, they could be drones, but those are not Russian drones that are flying into those airspaces. The videos of aircraft with civilian identification lights on them, like warning other aircraft and that there's a vehicle there, is not the kind of drones you use to pester a country. That doesn't make any sense. Every video you see is like a dark video and it's just a little like pan and it looks like a helicopter with blinking lights. So no, I do not consider that proof. I have not seen. Put it in IR. I know the Denmark military has infrared. Put it in infrared and let me see the heat signature and let me see the little drone flying. And that'll be like, hey, at least there are drones. I don't know where the drones are coming from, but at least we have drones. We have nothing. There is no evidence of these drones. Nothing. All right, guys, I am done with everything that I had to talk about. Those are all of my stories. Those are all of my topics for today. If you guys have anything you'd like to talk about, you can go ahead and throw it up in chat. We can get discussing. Yeah, they don't have IR or radar, and they can't shoot down any drones. The Russians should just invade Denmark. The Russians could just invade Denmark with drones without warheads. What could they possibly do? Strategically sending a few drones makes no sense. Correct. And if 2 + 2 doesn't equal 4, something's wrong. Can you talk about the Moldovan elections? Ah, very good, brother. I forgot about the Moldovan elections. I talked about them a couple months ago when they happened the first time, and all of the Moldovans voted for the Russian parties. And then the Moldovan and European Union basically, Moldovan government and European Union basically said, no, those elections don't count because of Russian interference. And then this election cycle, they banned the two most popular pro-Russian parties from the ballot and literally closed the bridge from Transnistria into Moldova so that the people in the break-off region could not vote. Also, I think that there were something like 12 booths set up in Russia for the diaspora to vote. And then in the European Union, it was something like 350 booths were set up. And they still did not win like by some insane margin like you would expect. Moldova, the Moldovan elections is not democracy. There is no more democracy in the European Union. If you like the AFD, they're killing all those guys from the AFD. If you like the pro-Russian government in or you want a pro-Russian party in Moldova, like the Moldovan people want, the European Union just says no and bans your party. So welcome to the democratic world. Yeah, they cheated incredibly and they barely got 51% majority. Yep, that's exactly right. Plan for Syria? I don't think there's a plan for Syria, bro. I don't know what they're doing over there because the US is supporting the Al-Qaeda regime, but then Israel is still striking everything in Syria and getting at odds with that regime, and it's just a hotbed of chaos, and we'll see what ends up happening with it, honestly. They did the same thing in Romania. Yes, they did. Thanks, Scott. I 100% agree with you. Well, don't 100% agree with me. You should disagree with me on some things, but I appreciate it. Remember, guys, if you have any questions, you can go ahead and get them in. Thank you, Optimistic Future, for your super chat as well. Europe is literally falling into dictatorship and then calls Russia the most authoritarian dictatorship in Europe. Yep. It's just projection, man. Whatever you're accused of, accuse your enemy of. What is the name of the Venezuelan president? Nicolas Maduro. Unless you mean the legitimate Venezuelan president, that's Juan Guaido, and he's in Miami. Welcome to Miami. Do you think China and Russia could load up Venezuela with their weapons? There's already a bunch of Russian and Chinese weapons in Venezuela, like Buk missile systems and stuff like that. I don't think that there's going to be a ton of Russian and Chinese support. No. I think the idea is to keep Venezuela from getting regime changed at all. And by providing military support to Venezuela, you may actually force regime change to happen. When is Ukraine invading Transnistria for a PR victory? Soon, brother, soon. It's coming eventually, right? They have to do something because things are going really, really bad. And that's why I'm concerned about a larger event, like something dramatic happening, because the Ukrainians are just running out of time and they're running out of space on the map. And eventually you're going to see massive Russian advances that are just not going to be stopped. And this is going to create untenable situations across the front line. If you want to prevent the entire state from dying, you have to do something escalatory now to just prevent that from happening. And it might accelerate it happening as well. That's the risk with doing something like that. But I don't see any way out for the Ukrainians. So going for Bryansk region, going for into Belarus or something, going into Transnistria is always a possibility. Thank you for your super chat. Maduro. Sorry, Maduro, not Maduro, not Maduro, not Mordo. Maduro. Sorry, guys. It doesn't matter. You know who I'm talking about. Pronounced the name a little wrong. Murdoch? Also, isn't there a Russian Spetsnaz unit in Chechens? No, there are Russian units there. I don't know if there's a full like Russian Spetsnaz unit. Sorry, guys. I talk a lot. Names get mixed up. You got about a billion things to remember, and the pronunciation of the Venezuelan president's name is just not always at the top of my list. Glad more people are waking up to the U.S. and Israeli antics. Yeah, man. The Great Awakening is upon us. That's for sure. My generation and the younger generations below me, man, they do not fuck with that at all. The thing about it is, for a long time, we used like my parents and their parents would put up with all of that shit, right? Put up with all of the poor foreign policy decisions, put up with all of the killing of other people in other places, because at the end of the day, the Americans who were the ones who would need to be vocal about it were getting homes very cheap. They were making a bunch of money. Their lives were fantastic. So the boomers and Gen X were actually getting something out of all of the evil that the US was projecting across the globe, right? So you're going to be quiet about it. Also, you don't have the internet. You kind of hear what you're told, sort of deal. Now, kids these days have unlimited information at their fingertips, right? You have everything right in front of your face all the time. You get to see the babies get killed. And when that happens, it changes your opinion on things, right? So the millennials, my generation, which is like kind of in the middle. I'm not exactly Gen X because I was born too early, but I'm definitely not a millennial because I don't remember 9/11, right? I was like 3 when 9/11 happened. So like for me, I'm in a little bit different of a generation, but that group who's now going to become the politicians and going to become the voting base doesn't fuck with Israel at all. And that's why Israel's doing what it's doing. It knows it has until the boomers die to change its position. Even Gen X, like my mom is now pretty anti-Israel. And that's interesting. Not that she was pro-Israel before, but she has an opinion on it now when previously, it was just they've been fighting over there for thousands of years. Which is true. Thank you for your question. Yeah, I'm old Gen Z, but I'm definitely not Gen Z though. Because I remember the early 2000s. Like I grew up like they were all the Gen Zers don't remember like 2008. Like that's that's how you have to think about it. I literally remember like cell phones coming out like for everybody to use like the flip phones and stuff. Like I remember that. They don't remember that. You talk to Gen Z nowadays, they didn't watch like cartoons like we did. They don't watch TV the same way. They're like a YouTube generation, online generation, because they had access to the internet when I didn't have access to the internet like that. Like I had access to the internet, but the internet wasn't what it is now. So Popeyes was a solid choice, by the way. The calibrated diet really works. It does, guys. I'm not going to steer you wrong. I will tell you, give me any restaurant. I'll give you the best thing from that restaurant, hands down, because I've gone through like a bunch of different menus and stuff when I go to places, and I always know the best thing at every single place. Hell yeah. That Popeyes meal is fucking bomb, dude. I want Popeyes so bad right now. That sounds so good. Scott, when you say something I don't agree with, I'll let you know. Okay, thank you. I appreciate it. Five Guys? So I just have my burger that I really liked. I worked there for 3 days. I know I've told this story a bunch. I hated it. But I have my burger that I like. I just like the double bacon cheeseburger. And then I get the large Cajun fries, which is like so much fries. And that's a good cheap meal, but that also comes out to like $55. So that's why I don't really like Five Guys. I feel like it's so expensive. Listen, I've never been to Culver's, guys. I live in a place that is actually devoid of a lot of restaurants, and I've seen Culver's. I've driven by it. I go to Dallas a lot, and they have them there, but they don't have any in Albuquerque. If you look at a map, go look at a map of New Mexico and look at all of the restaurants we don't have here, but that are in the states that surround us. We are like a logistical nightmare for restaurants to come to, I guess. I don't know. We don't have an In-N-Out burger. We don't have a lot of stuff. Domino's? Domino's! When you go to Domino's, you got to get... I mean, I just crush like 3 large pizzas. So that's like my order at pizza places is pretty consistent. I like sausage mushroom, but I'm more of a pepperoni guy. So thoughts on Steak and Shake? I've had it limited times. Again, I don't have access to certain fast food restaurants, so I'm not going to give you my take, but I like In-N-Out more than I like Steak and Shake and Five Guys personally. I think In-N-Out has just better quality food. Fuddruckers, man, I haven't been to a Fuddruckers in a hot minute, dude. We have those here, but I have not been to a Fuddruckers in forever. I like the chicken and sandwich. Yeah, that's the spicy chicken sandwich is what you get on top of your meal. That's like the extra meal. Can never go wrong with that. How about Sonic then? Okay, this is bad. Sonic is a bad one. Every time I eat Sonic, I get sick. Like I it's like not like actually sick, not like my stomach or on the toilet or anything. Just like it feels like I ate something terrible for me. But you get a custom shake, like a whatever you want, whatever Sonic Blast you want. Like I just had Sonic last night. And so I can let you guys in on the secrets. They have these little dessert things that are so good. Don't know what they are. They're like little cinnamon things. Bomb. I think they're new. They're so good. You get your shake, whatever shake you like. I usually get M&M, Oreo, Reese's. Like that's kind of my mix. Those are my candies. And then you get a foot-long chili cheese coney. Bomb. Makes you feel terrible. It's the worst thing you could eat. And then I always get the mozzarella sticks. And it is, I'm not, listen, I was preaching about how I had the best orders at other places. My Sonic order is not the best order, and I don't get it all the time. I get it when I'm like, I just need to eat like 3,000 calories of trash. That's when I get Sonic. So In-N-Out is overrated, to be honest. I think it is overrated. I think that people talk about it like it's the greatest thing ever. I think if you rate it properly, I think it is one of the better burger places, though. In terms of every time when you go in there, you get a good quality sandwich every single time. The fries are also pretty good, and I kind of like the aesthetics of In-N-Out. Just saying. Baskin Robbins, that's just ice cream, right? I'm more of a Cold Stone Creamery kind of guy, but I don't really eat a lot of ice cream. I like sherbet or coffee ice cream. Those are like the two kind of ice creams that I regularly eat. If I was going to get ice cream, I'd go to Sonic. Good afternoon. Good to see you in here. Oh, my keyboard dropped. Do you like Baja Fresh? Again, I don't think I've ever had it. Oh man, New Mexican politicians are cringe. Yeah, bro. We're like a blue state with no money and no population and no industry. It's weird. It's a very weird state. We have a lot of open space, beautiful sunsets and sunrises, but yeah, we don't produce anything beneficial for the state. We have movies. I guess we have film industry. Breaking Bad and stuff was filmed here. We have a lot of films filmed here actually, because we have good tax rates, better than California. What's your favorite steakhouse? I like I usually like steakhouses that aren't chains, but I don't really go out to steakhouses a lot. I always feel like you don't get the right cut of meat. It's not the way you want it cooked. It never tastes good for what you're paying for. I always buy steaks myself and grill them myself. So for steakhouse, I don't really know. If I was gonna go to a steakhouse, I'd probably just go to like Longhorn. I don't know. Or if there's a single owned steakhouse, I'd prefer to go to that. I went to a really good one in Odessa, Texas one time. I can't remember what the name of it was, but their steaks were so good, dude. It was crazy. Yeah, no, I'd prefer to cook my own steak. I like to grill, so I make good steaks. But you always got to go with top sirloin. That's my favorite cut of meat, or a New York strip. Some people really like the marbling. I'm not so much a fan of marbling. I like just whole meat cuts. So less fat and more protein and that's why I like top sirloin. I like food questions. Hey Scott, Scott, a question from Russia. How come you seem don't hate Russia when everybody west hates Russia? Don't you have to act in America's best interest? I don't think anything we're doing is in America's best interest. I believe that I am acting in America's best interest, and I'm not I'm not like a supporter of Russia. I'm not like, I'm not like, yeah, the Russians are winning. Let's go, let's go. I'm like, I would like to not see Ukrainians getting slaughtered and Russians getting killed in a war that doesn't need to be happening because of poor U.S. foreign policy. What does this do to benefit America's interests? That's my question to you. Has this helped Europe's economy? Did destroying Nord Stream do anything beneficial for Europe at all, Germany? Their economies are in the toilet. Has anything we've done for Ukraine benefited them? We couped their government. We installed a puppet. That puppet went against its own interests and went to war with Russia. Once we went to war with Russia, gas prices shot up. Inflation has shot up. Not saying it's directly correlated with that, but we're on the wrong trajectory. And instead of fixing problems here, we're fighting empire wars, and it makes no sense. It's not. They're wars that don't need to be happening because we're afraid of the rise of China. So I don't think we're acting in our own best interests. I think we're actually working against our own interests for the interests of very, very rich individuals who will control every aspect of your life and not let you see what you want to see because they control everything. That's what I think. Like TikTok is owned by Israel now. So, another platform controlled by the Western propaganda machine. Not that China couldn't negatively influence the United States through TikTok or anything like that. But it's clear why we wanted TikTok, because TikTok was a media outlet that showed what was happening in Gaza. It's not going to be happening anymore. So get ready. Where's Hades, Maine? He's outside sunbathing, I think, right now. That's usually what he's doing at this time. I have the other dogs upstairs, but they're old and lazy. Check out Hinkali. It's a Georgian dumpling, healthier option. Ooh, that sounds good. I'll look it up and see if I can find any around me. Question. Trump takes Venezuela, increases oil production to lower the price and hurt Russia. He also sells. No, that's not really going to happen. See, you have to have agreements with OPEC and OPEC Plus, which Russia is a part of. So you're not really going to. It's going to be really hard to flood the market. And if you go to war with Venezuela, you're probably not. That's probably not going to happen for a couple of years. That you have to set up infrastructure. That infrastructure is going to be damaged if you go in there like that. I don't think it's about countering Russia as much. I think the idea is that you get more resources to allow Europe to continue fighting for longer. So it's not so much about hurting the Russian economy as it is about propping up the European countries who you've stripped of their cheap energy resources. EU gas is up 25% and energy up 45% since 2021. Exactly. And it's only going to get worse. It's only going to get worse. It's only going to get more expensive. God forbid a war breaks out in one of these countries that is an oil producing nation. It's going to get worse. If something goes on in Venezuela, it's going to get worse before it gets better, definitely, temporarily, which could have tremendous cascading effects on the European economies. So, yep, you're absolutely right. It's up, and it's going to keep going up, and you guys are just going to get poorer and poorer and poorer. And your governments do not care. Have I tried Balkan or Mediterranean foods? Yeah, we have. We have a couple of really good Mediterranean places around here. One of the places, I think it's kind of like a chain, but it's like a Taste of Jerusalem or something like that. There's like a Palestinian place right here, and their food is so bomb, dude. It's so good. It's like a hole in the wall place, and it is just so good. Rip Harambe, rip Peanut. OGs never die. Facts. Literally facts, bro. All right, guys. That brings us to an hour and 20 minutes. Thank you so much for tuning in. Remember, if you wish to support my work, you can do so through that Buy Me a Coffee link in the description of this video. I appreciate you all so much tuning in today. If events happen and news happens, I'll be back on here Wednesday or Friday for another live stream. Everybody, take care. Enjoy your week. Be safe, be smart, and don't be gullible. Don't get tricked by the dummies, right? They're not smarter than you. They just have more resources. So just use your brains and come to the proper conclusions. All right. Take care, everybody. I will see you on the next one. Goodbye.